talking concretely about what does that message, what is it supposed to mean? Why is it so important? And most importantly, you just saw that communicating why you are a progressive in 5 words or less is tremendously difficult. I would say that if we had a group of conservatives in here, it would be easy for them to do that. Now, why is that? I'm sorry, the back in the middle from Kakana, you said you were afraid that, or you're concerned about the future of our species because of everything that's going on, that it's destructive. That all has to do with framing. So by the end of the day, you're going to understand why this framing thing is so important. It's not about winning a campaign. It's literally about saving the world. Mm-hmm. Because there's a term in sociology called hypocognition. Hypocognition is a state where there is no language in public discourse to communicate an idea. So when you think in terms of all the things that you just talked about what is important to you as a progressive, why you're a progressive, why do you think it's so hard? Because we're in a state of hypocognition in terms of progressive politics and progressive policies. The language, the effective language doesn't exist anymore. And that's a result of the conservative dominance of framing over, as you're going to see here, 60 plus years. It has a physical effect on your brain. Okay, everything you understand about the world is physically embodied in your brain, and it influences your physical behavior. Let me repeat that. Everything that is meaningful to you about the world, everything that you understand, everything that you think, is physically present and structured in your brain. We know that from neuroscience, cognitive science, right? So those ideas, progressive ideas, aren't floating out in the air for people to grab onto. It has to be physically there in your brain in order to be meaningful and for you to understand it and for it to be present in the world. It's not. That's why reframing to evoke progressive ideas is so critical. Because it's about bringing progressive ideas back into public discourse so people care about progressive values. So when we talk about progressive and conservative today, we're not talking about partisan definitions. And we're going to get to this in a second. We're talking about 2 metaphorical moral models that exist everywhere in society. It's in religion, economics, everything, progressive and conservative. So, looks like we're almost ready.
Not yet.
No, that's fine. So, as we're going through today, it's really important to remember that this is a mind-changing thing. It's not propaganda. It's not trying to convince you of something that's untrue. So what we're going to try to do today, by 2:30, is to get you to a point where if somebody asks you why you're a progressive, those 5 words are going to come a lot easier. Because we're going to physically evoke those ideas and activate the neural circuits in your brain that need to be activated to evoke progressive ideas. Okay, because right now, if you picture the idea of evoking frames and how your brain works with neural circuitry is a lot like a road that's present in your brain, right? You have neural circuits that fire across sections of your brain and that evokes ideas. Okay, so think of it as roads. The conservative frame, the conservative road right now is like Interstate 94. It's fast, it's easy, everybody takes it because it's well developed. The progressive frame is like rural Route 3. It's rough, it's bumpy, nobody travels it anymore because it hasn't been worked on. So we need to work on. So, are we in?
I just want to make sure the volume is not to blow this lady off her stool.
I can just queue up a video quick here
Cue
and
up a video, that'd be great.
we'll see how it works.
For 12 years, our nation was afflicted with hear nothing, see nothing, do nothing.
Everybody hear it?
Yeah, I'm right up to move. No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
All right.
If we were talking about eyesight, I'd be fine, but unfortunately, I have great hearing.
Okay. So we're off. Can everybody see the screen? Do we need to? Okay. Okay.
I don't bite, really. Everybody wants to sit here.
So here's what we're going to
In daytime, I'm
quick overview of what we're going to do between now and 2:30. First of all, you're going to learn how your brain really works. And this is not, it's not going to be super complicated, but also why it matters, why it's critically important. So the difference between two metaphorical moral systems, conservative and progressive. So why do we call them metaphorical? Everything you understand about the world is what's called embodied metaphor. Every single thing you physically understand about the world is metaphorical in your brain, right? Without even thinking about it, if I have an empty glass, that's not good. Empty is bad, full is good. Up is good, down is bad. Forward, good, backwards, bad. Okay? Progressive, conservative are based on your metaphorical understanding of the family. Because when were you first governed? Right. From the moment you were born, you were governed. And all of that understanding is metaphorical.
Can I fix something?
Oh, sure. Yep, you bet.
No, that's on you.
Oh, it's on me.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Because if that microphone stays where it is, all you're going to do is scratch, scratch, scratch on your shirt. Wonderful.
Okay.
And then if you can just sit close, just
Yeah,
sit
yeah.
down, and then
Ooh.
the microphone will pick you up.
Ooh, okay.
Thanks.
So, how to avoid frequently made messaging mistakes. And I have some good examples in video for that. Finally, we're going to look at how to change the frame, once we learn what a frame is, of critical issues, which can then change public discourse. And I would point out, this isn't a mission to go out and change hardcore conservatives to progressives tomorrow. There are some people who, this is deeply embodied in people, they think they're moral, and you're not going to win them over. Okay, the Leah Vukmirs, the Alberta Darlings, Glenn Grothmans, Jim Sensenbrenners, you're not good, Paul Ryans, you're not going to win them over. You don't have to, right? To change electoral results, you don't need to win everybody over. You need to change public discourse in your community and have people care about the things you care about. So let's have some fun. How did we get here? So in the 1930s,
It would help if you would move to your right or to your left. If you're standing right there in front of your screen.
okay.
or sit down.
Or if there's two seats up here, or you could take chairs. I think for the video they want me right here. Sorry about that. So we had FDR and the New Deal in the 1930s. Started a big wave, as you know, of progressive policies. What's important about that is that FDR and the people who supported the New Deal, both Republicans and Democrats, communicated it as a moral imperative. Okay? They didn't talk about every specific issue's effect on every single demographic group in the country. It was one big package, and it was a moral imperative. In fact, so much so that FDR's detractors accused him of making speeches that were more like sermons. And the first video is an example of that. And
For 12 years,
let me get this up ahead a little.
our nation was going to make my full work
Okay.
for the needy unemployed because we prefer useful work to the pauperism of a dole.
Okay, here comes the important part.
And here and now, I want to make myself clear about those who disparage their fellow citizens on the relief rolls. They say that those on relief are not merely jobless, they say that they are worthless. Their solution for the relief problem is to end relief, to purge the rolls by starvation.
Interesting. Did you get that? Their solution is to end relief by purging the rolls through starvation.
The final solution.
Exactly. He was framing the opposition as people who are immoral. Okay? We'll continue on.
But you and I will continue to refuse to accept that estimate of our unemployed fellow Americans. Your government is still on the same side of the street with the Good Samaritan and not with those who pass by on the other side.
How about that? Your government is on the side of the street of the Good Samaritan, not with those who pass by on the other side. Right? He wasn't talking about specifics about the New Deal or what his program was. He was making a moral argument. And more to the point, he was undermining his opponents in his frame with his moral certitude, saying, we're on the side of the Good Samaritan. Again, religion, the progressive view of religion, not with those on the other. Fascinating stuff. Brilliant. Oops, sorry.
Of course we will continue our effort.
So there's the quote there. That was from 1936. Okay, your government walks on the same side of the street as the Good Samaritan. Oops. There we go. So out of that progressive movement with the New Deal, corporations, big corporations, J.P. Morgan Chase, Sun Oil, they were going insane because they thought that they were looking at the death of capitalism, because the groundswell was so great for these progressive ideas. So in the 1940s, the National Association of Manufacturers came together and they held a conference. And they invited this man, Reverend James Fifield. Have any of you heard of him? Yes. He was an evangelical minister who had a huge congregation in Los Angeles. He came and preached at a convention of the National Association of Manufacturers, who were so moved by what he said. He said that the New Deal is anti-Christian because it will destroy capitalism. And nothing is more Christian than capitalism. Does that sound familiar? It started in the 1940s. So the National Association of Manufacturers started a campaign all around the country called Freedom Under God. You want to know where One Nation Under God came from? Started there. Radio programs, TV specials, weeklies in newspapers all over the country. Coordinated sermons every Sunday all over the country, written by Fifield and distributed to ministers and congregations all over the country, where they were delivering the same message about the goodness and Christianity of capitalism. Question?
So when did Under God get into our Pledge of Allegiance?
Late 50s.
Eisenhower, wasn't it?
Well, it came after the McCarthy.
Okay.
Right, so it was late
It stemmed
50s.
from that.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And actually, it was promoted by, Knights of Columbus was a primary moving organization promoting that and putting that phrase in the pledge.
Right. So what they did was they were trying to create a moral counter to the New Deal as being anti-Christian.
Not to take you off in another direction
Yep.
too radically, but this same campaign was mounted by the British
Yes, it was.
in colonial India to support the opium trade, which destroyed China.
Yeah.
The same message.
I mean,
Capitalism is Christian.
right.
They took what the Spanish were doing even earlier than that in saving souls by killing them and made it about the mercantilism of the British Empire.
Yep. Yep. So this corporate influence on defining Christianity as capitalist had a significant role in the anti-communist movement. Is a direct, the empathy, or not empathy, but the sympathy toward the anti-communist movement was created directly out of this idea that capitalism is Christian. There's a direct moral connection, because it then framed communism as evil. Okay? And again, these corporations, in their programs and in advertisement, intentionally quantified corporations as capitalist as being moral, and started creating, and you probably remember seeing communist, anti-communist propaganda literature that was very highly, had pictures of Satan, people who are communists being illustrated as satanic and demonic, and capitalism being good. Here's an example of that. This is from actually a show in the 50s. Paramount News. I'm going to skip ahead. Watch this. Let's get out of the way here. All right, there's a church. Listen to what this guy says about the sponsors.
We can move the clock back. The time is not yet. Let us pray that it never happens in our country. Before we meet the members of the American Legion Post 279 who helped make this picture possible, I'd just like to say that it gives me a great deal of satisfaction to represent two outstanding shopping centers in California, the shopping hub of the San Gabriel Valley in West Arcadia, and the Whittier Quad Shopping Center in Whittier, California, because they are concrete expressions of the practical idealism that built America. When you visit these two fine shopping centers, you'll find more than 80 beautiful stores.
80.
Sparkling assortments, an attractive atmosphere, and of course, plenty of free parking for all the cars that we capitalists seem to acquire. Who can help but contrast the beautiful, the practical settings of the Arcadia shopping hub and the Whittier Quad with what you'd find under communism?
It's not safe to hope for the best without...
Right? Great metaphorical imagery, contrasting the bright, shiny, all the cars, the free parking, the abundant choices.
Everything
And
It's always black and white.
yes, contrast that with what you'd find under communism. You know, after they had shown imagery of a fist smashing churches and banks and city hall and pushing over pillars with, you know, national unity and
The mall is a virtual Christian option to downtown Main Street.
exactly, that's right. So understand, I mean, this anti-communist thing was built on the values of personal liberty. Personal liberty is very strongly evocative of the conservative frame of self-reliance and personal choice. They created metaphors for capitalism to embody these ideas. Okay, none of them are literally true. But metaphorically, we understand them metaphorically. Moving right along. So this is through the 50s. Into the 60s, the Goldwater. Now, Goldwater lost by a landslide, but he did something very important. He legitimized extremism in the Republican Party. Here's the speech where he did it. This is his 1964 acceptance speech.
Each week, American History TV's Real America brings you archival films that help tell the story of the 20th century.
Ironic it was in San Francisco.
Let our republicanism so focused and so dedicated not be made fuzzy and futile by unthinking and stupid labels. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
When he says liberty, he means personal liberty. Huge applause.
And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
How about that?
Kind of contrast with the riots in Baltimore.
Think about that. Yes, he lost. Yes, there was the Great Society. But this explains how extremely conservative Republicans, how this legitimized their extremism.
Moderation in the pursuit of justice
Is no virtue.
In the pursuit of justice.
Is no virtue, right?
Actually, I think we could use that.
It was.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
We could get
Put into our,
Riots.
put it in right. You'd have to reframe it.
That works in Baltimore today.
But because you'll see the progressive frame is not about extremism in the pursuit of personal liberty. See, that's the thing. He was talking about extremism in the context of personal liberty, meaning you can do whatever the hell you want.
Right.
If you have money, we'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. The other thing he did was throughout his campaign, he started this idea that the public is immoral because it takes away personal liberty through regulation, taxes, liberty as in pursuit of profit. So the Nixon campaign of 1968. So coming off the huge loss of Goldwater, the Republicans were in serious trouble, conservatives overall. They were actually, they were more afraid of the loss of conservative ideas more in '68 than they were after the New Deal, because of the groundswell of what was happening around the country. Think of it, the civil rights movement, women's lib movement, academic liberals protesting the war, right? Everything. So they had a serious problem. Nixon and his campaign, out of that, did a brilliant thing. They created the conservative populist movement against the liberal elite. Nixon was going to be the law and order president, who was going to bring those undisciplined liberals wherever they are and whatever they're doing. He's going to bring them in line so they respect traditional family values. Nixon gets elected. 1971, he nominates Lewis Powell to the U.S. Supreme Court. Have any of you read the full Powell memo? Okay. Go home, Google Lewis Powell memo, and you can read the whole thing. So before he gets confirmed for the Supreme Court, he writes a memo to the head of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The memo was titled Attack of the Free Enterprise System. And basically the memo said this: we need, as conservatives and the heads of corporations, to fund mechanisms around the country that will guarantee the survival of the free enterprise system. Think tanks, judicial seminars, endowed chairs in public universities, to make sure that private enterprise and capitalist ideas are preserved.
Is that when William Buckley came into play?
Yes. Yes. Because the next slide, what happened as a result of that? Everybody's heard of the Heritage Foundation. It's founded in 1973. They have an annual budget of almost $100 million. It was the first think tank founded by, as a direct result of the Powell memo, funded by corporations. Their mission statement is not a laundry list of issues. It's a statement of values. Public policies based on free enterprise, limited government, individual freedom, traditional American values, strong defense. That is the basic foundation of the conservative frame, which you'll see later. A few years later, Leadership Institute was founded. I'll make sure I share this with Mary and Ann, and then they can distribute the PowerPoint to you, and you can so you can see the links.
Thank you.
But you look at the website, the Leadership Institute website. They started in 1979. They now train thousands of conservatives all over the country. They have free webinars. They have training sessions all over the country. This summer, they have a youth leadership training program in Milwaukee. It's 3 days, all meals included, everything $10. And it's at the Wisconsin Center downtown. You think somebody's funding that? Finally, the linchpin, Grover Norquist. In 1985, at Ronald Reagan's request, Norquist founded Americans for Tax Reform. Every single grassroots conservative, the Tea Party, anything came out of this. Because they standardized Wednesday morning meetings in Washington, D.C. And now those meetings are held all over the country, all over the world, in 26 countries, in every state in the nation. And what's the format? First hour is meet and greet. No, first hour is meet and greet. Second hour, issue roundtable. Go around the room,